An AI CEO has a warning for the US government and really for all of us. The joblessness crisis that AI is about to inflict on our population will likely be much worse and come on much quicker than anyone is expecting or admitting. And I'm sorry, I know that that's quite a way to start a video, but Dario Amodei, the CEO of the artificial intelligence company Anthropic, is talking about one aspect of the AI explosion that people, government officials specifically, are less willing to talk about, and that is the very real effects that AI will have on the American job market. Amodei told Axios that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs, and that in the next 1 to 5 years, unemployment in this country could be as high as 10 or even 20% because of it.
I think over the last few months, I've become increasingly aware that there's kind of another task at hand, which is that the world as a whole deserves to know about what's coming. It's going to affect each individual person. For some of these job display, that's a separate topic, and we're starting to think quite a lot about that, and how to handle that in the short run and how to handle that in the long run in a way that we all end up in a good place on the other side. But I think the thing that's striking to me is that there's a slice of the AI research community for which this is starting to become conventional wisdom, right? Where 2 to 3 years, that wouldn't shock anyone. If you filled this room with a certain kind of person, it wouldn't shock anyone at all, right? Or even if I said it in the streets in San Francisco, it starts to maybe not shock people at all. But then you go to the outside world, and it's just totally different.
Amodei said AI companies and government needed to stop sugarcoating what's coming. The possible mass elimination of jobs across technology, finance, law, consulting, and other white-collar professions, especially entry-level gigs. And this isn't the first time that we've heard a tech CEO warn the populace about a tech that they've built and continue to develop and profit off of. But in this case, Amodei is saying that the government is not doing an adequate job of, one, warning the American people about what's realistically coming, and two, guiding our economy in such a way that AI doesn't completely cripple our entire society. But in this country, our leaders are less leaders and more politicians. And the difference there, to me, is that leaders lead and politicians run campaigns. Politicians are worried about getting elected and then getting re-elected. Our politicians don't like to think about long-term problems or their solutions because people don't like to hear about things that scare them. Personally, I feel like learning about your problem and understanding how to confront it is a far more effective way to deal with it than just running from it, especially in a situation like this one where it's the jobs of our politicians/leaders to lead the nation through tough times into the future. Literally lead, please. So by ignoring what's coming, they're really just not doing their jobs. But the American ideal is to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. So if 10 to 20% of us are unemployed within just a few years, if that, then I wouldn't be surprised if they just tell us to figure it out for ourselves. Of course, that is not feasible. It never was feasible. A country cannot both claim to be the best, richest country in the world and also have 10 to 20% of its population unable to find a job. But technology was always supposed to make our lives easier, not harder. We were supposed to eventually be able to work less, not more, a la George Jetson, who worked just 3 days a week, 3 hours a day. The result was supposed to be people who had more time for family and leisure because the machines were automated to do so many of the menial tasks that currently occupy 40 plus hours of our lives each week. And I know I keep talking about what was supposed to happen, but according to who? Well, Andrew Yang came to prominence in American politics because he spoke about a universal basic income, something that most people could hardly comprehend at the time. They can't even really do it now. However, the more people thought about it, the more the idea starts to make sense. If people are working less because we don't have to work as much and or because there are fewer jobs for people to do, then the government still needs to ensure that there is not complete lawlessness and poverty in the streets. Jobs, if anything, they keep people busy and occupied for a minimum of 40 hours a week. So, if there is no way for people to earn a living because those jobs have all been eliminated, then the government should disperse the money that is still being made to the non-working populace. Again, because most of the populace would theoretically be non-working. And of course, the government would still have money to disperse to the people because money is still being made, just not by human labor. The details are for you to explore on your own time. I'm just using Yang's premise as an example of someone recognizing where the future was headed a long time ago and warning the people and the government that this is a future we should all be preparing for right now, not later. And for all the people saying, oh, AI will take over our jobs eventually, how long do you really think this is going to take? The programs are getting smarter and smarter, faster and faster. They learn at exponential rates. And I feel like people hear that word a lot, but they forget what the word exponential actually means. We've already seen AI advancements that we were told would take months or years happen in fractions of that time. Amodei's AI is already coding at near human levels. It's only a matter of time, and probably not much time, before it far exceeds human capacity and capability. Couple that with the Trump administration firing people from government jobs and closing down entire government departments, and we're going to be reeling from these few months of the Trump presidency for years to come. Amodei said that CEOs are afraid to talk about it, and he said that workers are woefully unaware and unprepared for what awaits them. Regarding lawmakers, he says they either don't get what's happening, which seems more plausible than not, or they don't believe what's coming. Only the best and brightest, right? He said most of them are unaware that this is about to happen. It sounds crazy, and people just don't believe it. So the question is now, do we or can we trust our government, the lawmakers who Amodei says don't even understand or believe in the threat, to guide us through this time? I don't, and while people can get scrappy if they need to, 10 to 20% unemployment is insurmountable unless there is already some sort of program in place that acknowledges that many of us simply don't need to work anymore. Those are unemployment figures that we typically see in war-torn nations, by the way. But why would the government incentivize people to not work? It goes against our American hustle culture, and idle people is not good for government control. The government is already trying to mandate that people work in order to receive health care, while that same government is firing people from the jobs they're required to have. And why should the government be trusted to disperse funds to people in a way that is fair and equitable when we already have an administration that is willing to cut necessary jobs and programs like public health and public education just so they can keep trillions of dollars at the top where they feel it belongs? And then why would the American public, specifically the right wing, support the government literally handing out money to people who aren't working? They can't stand a handout of any kind, and they despise people who don't work enough or don't work at all, however much enough even is to them. This is more than an economic shift. This is a cultural shift. It's an ideological shift. And considering half of our nation is still taking its cues from a book that is thousands of years old, half of them still believe in the virtue of resisting progress, I am not confident that they'll be able to make the necessary mental adjustments in time. And speaking of time, really, the time is already here. Many companies are already pausing new job listings or not filling existing open positions. Microsoft is laying off 6,000 workers already, including many engineers. Walmart is laying off 1,500 corporate jobs. CrowdStrike is cutting 500 jobs. Meta is cutting about 5% of its workforce. And in January of this year, Mark Zuckerberg told Joe Rogan, probably in 2025, we at Meta, as well as other companies that are basically working on this, are going to have an AI that can effectively be a sort of mid-level engineer that you have at your company that can write code. Eventually, tens of millions of jobs are expected to be lost, not replaced. In the past, when industries shifted from one to another, jobs transitioned from one job to another. People had to learn new skills maybe, or pivot to different industries even, but at least the jobs were somewhere. Perhaps in truly modern times, the mark of an advanced society and nation wouldn't be job creationism, but rather job elimination. While we are and will be seeing a lot more job elimination very soon, however, it's only a benchmark of success if the eliminations are deliberate and if society is built around them. We still have a society that thrives when jobs are created, not eliminated. We've only made half of this transition, and the second half is lagging woefully behind the first. But here's what we can more likely expect. The result could be a great concentration of wealth, and it could become difficult for a substantial part of the population to really contribute, Amodei tells us. And that's really bad. We don't want that. The balance of power of democracy is premised on the average person having leverage through creating economic value. If that's not present, I think things become kind of scary. Inequality becomes scary, and I'm worried about it. But he doesn't leave us with nothing. He says that there are things that can be done to avoid the worst case scenario from playing out, and the first step is just talking about what could happen, which is what he's doing now. Also, he says that job displacement, i.e. the rapid replacement of workers with AI, needs to slow down so that the transition can be better managed, both for companies and for workers. Members of Congress need to become better informed about the realities of an AI world that they're helping to usher in by not erecting meaningful barriers and safeguards to its adoption and proliferation. And with that, he says that there needs to be a real debate in government about what our new economy, which will inevitably be dominated by what he calls superhuman intelligence, will look like and how it will be managed, particularly in regards to wealth distribution and taxation in the country. By now, we should be used to hearing tech billionaires and elites warning us about the technology that they've helped to create and then market to the public. It's tired, but unfortunately, it's part of our reality. It's kind of nice because if anyone would know about the dangers of the tech, it'd be the people who created it to be dangerous in the first place. The caveat that is often presented is that tech can be dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. But that is an irresponsible caveat because we all know that it will. It's only ever a matter of time before anything falls into the wrong hands. And when the wrong hands are those of our overarching capitalist economic and social structure, then these technologies were created by the wrong hands. When our incompetent and/or corrupt government is the only safeguard that we have against these technologies being used improperly and abusively against the population, then we are decidedly in the wrong hands. Technology will always be the driving force of conversation and debate in government because it has to be. Change and progress are inevitable, and when they happen, we have to decide how we want them to impact our lives. I mean, we're all watching Severance right now, aren't we? Without getting into spoilers, the show isn't subtle about the fact that the severance procedure is a huge ethical and political debate in the real world, with members of Congress that have interest in the technology actively pushing pro-severance propaganda in the media in order to garner support for pro-severance legislation. The political debate surrounding technology is so integral to the advent and implementation of the technology that you cannot talk about one without the other. Lots of people try to, or they pretend that it is possible to have one without the other, but the reality simply is not so. Anyway, we are running out of time, not just to have the conversation, but to actually make some meaningful moves in this area. Will this Congress get it done? Not anytime soon. They're barely even talking about it. The conversation's already been started, but Congress is slow on the pickup. Maybe the midterms will bring some fresh thinkers into those hallowed halls, but for now, we are fighting an uphill battle. But hey, what else is new? All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.